Have you ever thought about prayer and wondered, what does it look like to pray well? What if I told you it's more simple than we think? In this video, I hope to encourage you by sharing some fresh thoughts about how you can have a healthier and stronger, more consistent prayer life today. What's up, family? I'm Dewzy. Welcome in. I am passionate about three things: Jesus, gaming, and sports. And I actually stream live every week over at twitch.tv/Dewzy2. If you give me a huge favor and drop a follow there, the link is in the description below. If you enjoy any of this content on this channel, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe below. Let's get into the content today. Sometimes I think we are experts at taking fairly straightforward things, decisions, choices, life activities, simple things, and making them as complicated as we possibly can. My younger brother and I will play video games together on a regular basis, and we will spend 18 minutes trying to decide which game we're going to play, when in reality, all we really want to do is spend time together and hang out. It's a very simple thing, a very simple idea, basic concept that somehow we make as complicated as possible. You didn't even know you could take something so simple and make it this complicated, but we're experts at it. But let's think about this on a spiritual level. Let's think about this in relation to prayer. A very common term, a very common attitude or method within like our following of Jesus. Prayer at its very core is really just a way for us to communicate between our heart and God's. There are different types of prayers that we could cover in another video. Let me know if that's something you would like in the comments below. But at the root of it, prayer is just communicating with God. But I think what happens for many of us, and maybe some of you that are even watching this video, is that we get stuck in our prayer life because we are more focused on what to say and how to say it, instead of thinking about why we should say it. But I believe Jesus taught his followers one powerful truth that you and I could learn from right here, right now, today, and that is this. Jesus taught his followers that their heart was more important than their words. In Luke chapter 18, verse 10 through 13, Jesus begins telling this story to his disciples about these two men who approached the temple to go and pray. And he tells them this story about this occurrence and this event, that there are two very different hearts in these prayers. You can check it out right here. Let's read this together. It's in Luke chapter 18, and it's starting in verse 9. He says, "He also told this parable to some who trusted in themselves that were righteous and treated others with contempt." And in verse 10, he says, "Two men went up into the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee, standing by himself, prayed like this: 'God, I thank you that I am not like other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, and even like this tax collector here. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all that I get.' But the tax collector," in verse 13, "standing far off, would not even lift up his eyes to heaven, but beat his chest, saying, 'God, be merciful to me, a sinner.'" These are two extremely different hearts in these prayers. The first man was a Pharisee, and if you've read any of the Bible, the Pharisee was a religious leader of the people. He was like a religious leader among the Jews, and he was a man who tried his very best to follow every single law that was laid out during that time. But he starts out his prayer with saying things like, "God, I'm thankful that I'm not like other people. I'm thankful that I'm not like these other unjust men, these extortioners and adulterers, these sinners." And he says, "I'm thankful that I'm not even like this tax collector over here." And he continues on in this prayer, and he starts kind of like looking self-centered. He starts focusing on himself, and it almost feels like he's justifying himself in what he does. He goes, "God, I fast twice a week. I neglect food for the sake of spending time in prayer with you, God. I give tithes of all that I get, meaning I bring you a monetary financial offering to the temple of everything that I earn. I do these things every week, God. And what we see is this man's prayer was maybe full of a lot of words, maybe full of a lot of phrases. Maybe his prayer was longer than the second man's, but his prayer was not about God. It was not about his goodness or his forgiveness. He started looking inwardly, and it was full of pride and selfishness. But the tax collector's prayer looked very different though. It says the tax collector walked in and he says he was standing far off, and it says that he could not even lift his eyes up to heaven to pray, that he was so ashamed and so broken and so hurt by his sinfulness that he was aware of. And it says that he beat his chest and he said, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I believe Jesus is highlighting this truth that God is more concerned with our heart than our words. And I believe this to be true as well. Our posture in prayer is way more important than the sound of our prayer. That word posture just means like a particular way of dealing or considering something, but there's also another definition that means this. It's the approach or the attitude that you go into something. So we think about that verse that we just read in Luke 18. One man had the right posture in prayer, the other did not. The tax collector had more words, maybe used more phrases, maybe spent more time in prayer, but his words were not what Jesus was concerned with. Jesus was highlighting the fact that his heart was more important. There's another scripture in Matthew 6 verse 7, and this is the part of scripture where Jesus is actually teaching his disciples, his followers, those that were listening, how to pray. Right? If you've ever heard the phrase like the Lord's Prayer, like our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, that one, this is the part of scripture where Jesus is instructing his believers on how to pray. But it's right here in verse 7 where we hear Jesus say this. He says this in verse 7. He says, and when you pray, do not heap up empty phrases as the Gentiles do, because they think that they will be heard for their many words. During this time, the Gentiles, he says, which in a really simplistic way were just people who were not Jews. You had Jews, you had everybody else. He says that the Gentiles would pray to these foreign gods and these false idols, but when they prayed, they would say a lot of phrases and they would use a lot of words, and they would say the name of the idol or the god, and they would go over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And what they believed, that as they babbled on and on and on and on and on and on and on, that was somehow going to help get their prayers answered, and that their God they were praying to would finally answer. And I believe Jesus, through his teaching in these two different accounts in the Bible, was reinforcing this idea that prayer is not about how many words we use, is not about how well they sound, it's not about using the church words we've heard a pastor say, it's not about using all the phrases that we don't even know the meaning of, that we heard our grandparents or an adult pray at another time. But Jesus is reinforcing this belief that your heart and the attitude that you approach God in prayer is much more significant than the words you use. Hey, maybe you're tuning into this video right now and you say, Dewzy, I'm not religious. I say that's okay. Maybe you're watching this video right now and you say, man, you know what? I was a follower of Jesus. I did believe in the things of God at one time, but you know what? Some stuff happened. Life took place. Life happened. And some things went south. Can I encourage you right now watching this video that right now, right here, today would be a great time to spend some time talking to God? Maybe you're watching this video right now and you say, man, I've been discouraged in my prayer life recently. I've been forgetful of my prayer life recently because you know what? Life happens. Or maybe I've been intimidated by my prayer life because I just feel like I've done too much wrong, or I've been too sinful, or I'm not as good as my friend who I know talks to God all the time, or man, I don't pray like my pastor prays, and I don't know how to use the fancy words or the churchy words. Can I tell you this, that God is not worried about the church vocabulary you use. He is worried about our heart and how we approach him and the attitude of our prayers. If you're watching this video right now and that's you and you say, man, I've been intimidated by prayer, my prayer life just hasn't been that strong, I've been neglecting it because of X, Y, and Z reason, can I please encourage you today? And my prayer is this, that maybe understanding this one truth, that prayer can be simple. Simple does not mean lazy, but your prayer life, it is a simple thing. It is us communicating with God. But I pray today that this video encourages you to understand that it's not about the words you use or how well it sounds, but it is about the contents of your heart and the attitude that you approach God with in prayer that really matters. Hey, my prayer is that this brings value to your spiritual life. And if this video meant something to you, could you do me a huge favor and just leave a comment below and let me know? I would love to hear if this impacted your life in a positive way. Can you also do me a huge favor? If this video, if this content brought value to you, can you click the like button on the video below? And while you're there, do me a huge favor and subscribe to the channel. I'm producing more content like this regularly. If you don't want to miss that, click subscribe and hit the bell below to make sure notifications are on. I'm so grateful that you tuned into this channel. Thanks for watching this video, and we'll catch you guys next time. Peace.